All right, everybody, welcome to the Ruby on Rails decal. If this is not what you're expecting, you're in the wrong place. Hi, my name is Howard, and I'll be your instructor for this semester. The reason I had that video recording going on is this is how I usually record lectures in the previous semesters. I was talking with our faculty advisor today, or a few weeks ago. I think we were supposed to have a webcast set up, but I don't see a webcast person here. Or is anyone a webcast person here? All right, so apparently we don't. So I'm just gonna record this lecture. I will upload all our lectures onto YouTube and post links on Piazza. So you could, if you ever do miss a class, you could catch up on the content through those videos. First off, just some logistical things I want to talk about that I got a lot of emails about. So a lot of people that were accepted into this course originally were not in, they were probably waitlisted or waitlisted in CS 170 or EE 16A. And a lot of you mentioned after that you got in that, oh, you have a time conflict with this course. A major part of your course grade is your attendance. So if you can't attend, you pretty much have to attend this class if you want to pass. But if in the situation that you do want to drop this course and attend CS 170 lectures and just come like in the second half of this course, feel free to come and audit this class because of that whole mishap that there were actually probably a lot of spaces. But for those of you who have been accepted in this class, are your CCNs working? Has anyone had a problem with their CCN yet? All right, perfect. But for everyone else that I emailed you about being on the wait list, just come talk to me after class and I'll get your names and emails down, and then on Thursday, I will send out the course CCNs for those on the wait list. And if anybody was not sure about adding this course until after the first lecture, after this course is over, just make sure, after this first lecture is over, make sure that you add the course by Thursday. Who here who has been accepted in the course or got a CCN has not been added to the Piazza or hasn't seen the Piazza? Okay. Just come talk to me after class. I'll make sure your emails are entered into our Piazza because that is our primary form of spreading out information. We'll make a lot of announcements through Piazza. And if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, come talk to me after class. I just wanted to give a little history and background about this class. This is the 4th semester this course is being offered, and what that means is there's been a lot of iterations on it. I've been with this course since the beginning, at first as a TA, and this is my 3rd time instructing the course and probably my last since I'm graduating. This course is sponsored by an organization on campus called Cal Blueprint. What they do is provide like $17 a month to pay for the website to stay up so that you guys could check in and submit your homework and whatnot. Huh?
They're so generous.
Yeah, very generous. The reason why this course was created was some students at this university took a bunch of computer science courses, and they're mostly grounded in like the theoretical side of computer science, or like basically like how you should think about these problems and whatnot. But when we went to our internships and our jobs, we realized that there's a lot of skills that were not taught in school, in this school, that we wanted to, we found useful. And what we wanted to do is create a decal that would focus less on theory and just more about an applicable tool, and that tool being Ruby on Rails. And so there's very little focus on this course about like learning the huge concepts behind it, or like knowing all the little reasons of why everything happens, but more how do I do something? If I have an idea, how do I make a web application that will execute my idea? So I just want to make a quick poll the class. How many of you guys had experience making a website that actually involves using database queries? Okay, that's a good portion of you. How many of you have experience making websites that are just plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Okay, that's another large portion of you. And how many people have no experience at all? Okay, and that's another sizable portion. And if you have no experience, don't worry. This class only makes the assumption that you've had some very basic program experience. So yeah, just wanted to see like what we're dealing with this semester in terms of prior knowledge. So when talking about web development, there are two types of web development. One is static, which basically means that the content pretty much is the same for everybody. That like if I go to a website versus you going to that website, we all see the same thing. An example that I have right here is a website called unboard.io. And what it is well, this website is just basically an advertisement for a video game company that makes mobile games, right? And you see here that all it does is it has links, presents me a bunch of information about themselves. And but nothing ever changes. There's no way for me to sign in. There's no way for this website to really detect that, oh, this is Howard using the website versus someone else. A website that has the ability to detect whether someone's like logged in or not is a Rails Decal website, for example. If I go to railsdecal.com, right now, I'm not logged in. It knows nothing. But if I click the top right, I'm able to sign in with GitHub, and now I have a profile. Now this website sends me back HTML that says, "Hi, Howard Chen," because it knows who I am, and it could record information. And for example, something that most of you shouldn't be able to see, I don't know if you could see it on the screen, is on the top right, I have something called admin dashboard. This website has the ability to detect that I'm one using it, and two, that I have like different privileges and stuff like that. And the purpose of this course is to be able to make a website like this that we could store information, retrieve information, have different users, and all that kind of cool stuff. Wait, but do we have any questions? Am I going too fast? Too slow? Good pace? Somebody say something. All right, I got thumbs up, so I'll roll with that. Basically, the parts of a static website are content, presentation, and interaction. And the ways we get put content on a website is through HTML, which is basically all the text you ever see on a website is just HTML. How we present that content that makes it look nice is CSS, which it tells the HTML basically what color to make this box, how big this box should be, what the font is, and all that stuff, which makes it look way better. And finally, a component that exists on some static websites is JavaScript, which allows you to kind of interact with the website to make cool animations, or if you click a button, some modal pops up, and you can interact with that. With a dynamic website, what it is that we do have all the parts of the static component, right? But like the example of the Rails Decal website, there are parts of the website that kind of detect who you are and store your information, or not necessarily your information, any kind of information. And one good example of another dynamic website is Facebook. Facebook changes, like what I see on my wall is completely different from what you see on your wall. It's because we have different friends. Facebook machine learning figures out what we're buying on Amazon. I don't know if you ever look at it, but the ads are kind of crazy. Like I'm pretty like, I don't know how they're finding out all this information, but they just like, if I just look up like, oh, I'm just trying to buy a pair of boots, for example, next on Amazon, and then I go on Facebook, I just see it at the bottom right. I was like, wait. But yeah. And if you're ever interested in that kind of stuff, you should probably take CS 189's machine learning. I took it. It was really hard. I barely understood it, but it was interesting. To make a dynamic website, what we need are three things. One, a way to store data. Two, a way to interact with this data we stored. And three, a way to present the data. So in these three images, on the top left is, I don't know if you can read it, it says PostgreSQL, which is a type of database. And databases are just basically programs that just simply store information. What you mostly write in, or what you're going to mostly learn in this course is about how to interact with the data and how to present with the data. How to present the data. And the way we're going to do this is using Ruby on Rails, which is which is a framework that is very common in web development. And I'm going to break down the components of it. So first of all, why is it called Ruby on Rails? And what is Ruby? So the Ruby part of Ruby on Rails is only talking about the programming language that Rails runs on top of. This programming language is very similar to Python. It's a very high-level language that is interpreted. So for those who have taken like 61A and 61B, the language is much more closer to Python than it is Java. An interesting thing is that that the creator of this programming language wanted to write a programming language that he said focuses on humans and not machines. And what this means is that Ruby is not the most performant language, but it is just very easy to use, and it takes away a lot of your worries. For those who are like C programmers, you have to worry about memory management, not letting people overflow your buffer and all these things. With Ruby, you don't have to worry about that. And the final cool thing about Ruby is its ability to do metaprogramming, which is basically you're able to actually edit functions, what a function does on runtime. This won't make sense now, but as we go on later in the course, I will start talking about how Ruby does a lot of its magic. And it's going to be all due to its ability to change its functions on runtime. Any questions? Okay. And don't worry, for your first homework, just going to basically be you dabbling in Ruby, just writing about like 3 functions, just to get kind of used to it. And the second part of this lecture will be just me going over some Ruby basics. All right. So what is Rails then? So Rails is the framework that you will be learning in this course. Rails's motto is convention over configuration, which means that so long as you follow certain conventions, like certain styles, that Rails will do a lot of things automatically for you. Instead of you having to configure like, oh, you have to tell it which database URL to use, or which, or like the exact URL that you're supposed to go to. Rails will give you a bunch of helper methods that will just make coding a lot more simpler when it comes to it. This will make sense, or this conventional configuration will show up when when we start actually getting into the content, the deeper content of this course, because you'll at some point see me type one line of code, and it'll do about like 5 different things, and you're gonna be like, what? And the reason it all works is due to convention over configuration. That being said, I'll try my best to explain how that one line of code does 5 different things. And it might be a little confusing at first, but as long as you keep on sticking with it, you'll do your own projects, you'll run into bugs, and you'll fix these bugs. After doing that, it'll become a lot easier. Rails runs on this idea of the MVC, or the model view controller, and it's a way to structure web applications. This does not pertain only to Rails. Other web frameworks follow very similar ideas. For example, Django. And what that means is that even if you after learning this course, learning the MVC model will make you understand better how to make Django apps or use other frameworks to make web applications. The reason why Rails is so popular is that it's very quick to get things running, or basically after you go through the whole installation process. The installation process might be a little tedious, but after that, once you have Rails on your computer, that once you have an idea with a Rails application, you could turn that you could get that idea out really fast, like a prototype just immediately. And it's the reason why it's very popular with startups, because they want to get features out very fast to test to see if their product is very marketable. And another thing about Rails is there's a vibrant community, which means that there's thousands of other people that use this web framework. So if you ever run into trouble, there's about 1,000 other people that have come to the same problem and have the answers to how to solve it. I'm going to break down the MVC model in a large overview picture. As we go through the course, we will touch upon these models more. So you don't have to know every detail about what I said or understand it completely, just get the big idea. So in our MVC model, we're going to start with a model. And basically what a model is the part of the application that interacts with storing the data and retrieving information. This is the part of your Rails application that will interact with your database. Most of your business logic will also go in the models. The V in MVC stands for views, and views is what users interact with. And basically your view consists of all your HTML, your CSS, and JavaScript, or basically all the components of your dynamic website. And finally, we have the controller, which basically responds to every request a user makes. So every time you use your web browser, when you go to a URL, when you click a button, you are making a request. And the controller basically is the part of the application that receives a request, like someone saying, oh, get me your home page. And it will figure out all the logic to grab user data. For example, it'll say, oh, look to see if this user is logged in right now. And the controller will say, oh, I need to figure out which view to send back the user. All this is done through the controller. You could think about it as the glue between your models and your views. And I want to see if I can full screen this. So I'll present this picture a lot. And after going through this course, we will learn every part about what happens between when a browser goes to a link and how a web application, or in our case, a specific Rails application, serves back HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for that link. I just want to go over it quickly in the big picture. But for example, let's say you're on your browser, right? And you're at step 1, you're at the bottom left, and you make a request. I'm not going to follow the exact script on the picture, but let's say we're going to facebook.com, right? And we're just going to the home URL. What happens when you when your browser goes to facebook.com is you'll fire a request. And if, let's assume Facebook is a Rails application. It is not, but in the case of if it were a Rails application, what we'll do is detect that some person on some browser sent us a request that said, oh, give me my home page, right? The router will say, oh, I have a specific controller that knows how to handle a homepage request. So what it'll do is it will select a controller, and what that controller is like, oh, I've got a homepage request from this specific user. It will go, if you see from step 5, or sorry, on step 3, from the controller to the model, it will say, oh, let's go to our user model, right? Our user model will say, oh, let me look in the database to see if this particular user is logged in. I grab that data, oh, this person is logged in, and now I also make requests for like, oh, posts on the wall, or ads I want to show this user. I grab all that data. I return all that data back to the controller. The controller, after receiving all the data, is like, oh, I got now his name, birthday, occupation, and I've got like the information in his first wall, the information that should show up on his wall. That now that I have this information, I'm going to go create a view, which is step 6. The view takes in all this data, creates an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to send back. It gives it back to the controller, and finally, after all of that, the controller hands it back to the browser, or returns answer to the request that was made by the browser. That might have just flown over your head, but that's pretty much what 168 is about, networking. Well, there's way more to that, to networking than just that. But basically, in this course, if that didn't make sense, it'll make sense at the end. That we're going to go, each lecture, we're going to go step by step through this. And eventually, we will use this structure to create an application that you could go show off to your employers or put on your resume, something cool like that. So I know I just said a lot of words, and it might have been kind of overwhelming, but that was the large overview of this class. If you've, and what we're gonna get to in the next few weeks is the details and step-by-step how to implement a web application. What are your questions? Yes, in the back.
By the end of this course, we have like our own personal website and both of together.
By the end of this course, you should have the ability to do that, but you're not going to have a personal project. You're going to have a team project that you will work with in a group of 3 to 4 people. Yeah, and you had a question?
What's the difference between a router and a controller?
A difference between a router and a controller. So this is more of an implementation detail, but a router is something that will read so basically HTTP request, right, comes as a string. Pretty much, you can interpret it as one very long string, right? What the router's job is to do is interpret that string and figure out which controller to call. It's just more a modularity on like what each section does. So this one just basically parses a string and then figures out which function to call. And the controller is like the particular function that you defined. All right, so those are good questions. Yeah, so I actually talk about these goals, but basically we will learn the basic structure of web applications, which in particular is like the MVC model, which isn't only applicable to Ruby, but also the goal of this course is to learn this particular tool and how to make web applications really fast with this tool. and hopefully learn other useful tools that are in the industry. These other useful tools are Git and RVM. So who here knows how to use Git and GitHub? Wait, who doesn't? Okay, no, that's fine. So we will, if you have trouble with Git, just let us know and we will help you. But apparently within the last 2 years, in UC Berkeley, when I took 61A and 61B, we didn't use Git, and no one in the lower divs knew version control or anything like that. But it's become more popular within lower divs. So before, this was like a main teaching goal, but it seems like most people have learned it now. That being said, if you don't know it and need help with it, we will help you. RVM is a tool useful in the industry to manage different Ruby versions. So basically, you could have like this is a real thing. Like even last summer during at my office, during my internship, we had 2 different Rails applications that ran on 2 different Ruby versions. So what RVM does is allows you to manage different versions of Ruby for each application. And we'll be installing that in the second half of the class. So more logistics. If you want to look at our syllabus, I'll post the syllabus on a pinned Piazza post after this class. You could go to bit.ly/sp16 syllabus. And you could get more information about that class there. But if you want to look at it after, it'll be in the pinned post. You'll get an email about it, so you don't have to worry about it now. But basically, some important points are the grade breakdown, which is 20% of your grade is attendance. If you have 1 unexcused absence, you'll still get full credit. If you have 2, you'll get half credit for that. And if you have 3, you'll get no credit for attendance. But if you slip into 4 absences or more, then it's an automatic no pass for this class. And this kind of structure is actually common in other decals. Another 20% of your grade is homework. There will be between about like 4 or 5 homework assignments in this course. We have 2 projects. One is a very guided project where we will kind of walk you through how to make a web application from start to finish. And you'll do this by yourself. This is about 25% of your grade. And finally, the most important project is the second project, which I was talking about earlier, your group project. You need 3 to 4 people in a group, and you'll be creating, you'll be running together, making your own idea. Like you guys will think about like what application to make and what you want to make. And the purpose of this is one, that we feel that the best way to learn Rails is to actually make something substantial with Rails, and 2, that it's a project to put on your resume. And what's nice about team projects on your resume is that that you could just say that, oh, I know I'm a great team player, or whatever people put. But yeah, a passing grade is about 70% or more. Some advice before the course starts, just come to office hours. I mean, so all the TAs and me, we don't get paid or anything. We actually just do this because we enjoy teaching. So don't be ever afraid to come to office hours. And if you feel like they're stupid questions, they're probably not stupid questions. Just please come. We really want to help you guys succeed and learn a new skill. But the second big advice is Google your bugs. And why I say this is that I feel like something I feel like I've gotten better at ever since I started learning Rails is how to Google search bugs, or knowing like which key terms to look for and which to leave out and that kind of stuff. Because there's so many, it's very similar to the idea that I'm not going to teach, what's that really common quote that goes, don't teach a man or give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. And it's that, like, we could give you, like, in this course, we give you very specific information about, like, tools or exact syntax or exact functions that you use in Rails. But the best thing you could learn in web development is basically how to always find the answers when it's not immediately in front of you. And this is probably a great place to practice that. Just to introduce some of the TAs, half our TAs are actually in 170. So you won't see them at the beginning of the beginning half of the lectures, but they'll come towards the end when it's our like lab time to help you with your homeworks or any questions you have. So this is Jenyu. He's a junior computer science major, and he has office hours Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Qualcomm. Next is Juno. Juno's actually on stand-up. I want to say hi to Juno. Yeah, Juno is a sophomore computer science major and doubled in Cog Sci. Yeah, doubling Cog Sci. And his office hours are Monday from noon to 1 p.m. at Qualcomm. Charles isn't here because he's in 170, I believe. He's a junior. No, I lied. He's in the back. Everybody say hi to Charles. Yeah, Charles is he's a TA for CS 169, which is the computer engineering course. So he knows everything about Rails. So if you have a question, ask him. And he's still finalizing his schedule for office hours. So we'll update that on the website, and post on Piazza when everything's finalized. Warren is definitely in 170. He's a sophomore computer science major. He took this course about 2 semesters ago, maybe. And his office hours are on Wednesdays from 3 to 4, but he needs to figure out a location. So that will be updated on the website. Daniel, on stand up. Everyone say hi to Daniel. Daniel's a freshman computer science major. He actually took this course last semester, and his office hours are from noon to 1 at Qualcomm. Sam is a junior EECS major. He was actually the first instructor of this course, but he's a really busy person. He GSI'd like 61AS, data science 8, and at one point CS 169. So he's, instead of being an instructor, he's just a TA now, but he's very, very insightful, knows all about Rails. Blows my mind every time I talk to him. His office hours are on Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. in the Berkeley Data Science building. And if you don't know where that is, it's actually within the Doe library, room 190. So if you go from Memorial Glade into Doe through those main doors, it's like the first door on your left. Let's see. Hubert, are you here? Or? Okay, I think he's one of my 170 people, but yeah, he's a junior, I think I typed that wrong. I think he's a junior CS major, and his office hours are also from noon to 1 in Yali's. And that's me. My name is Howard, senior computer science major. My office hours are from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Thursdays, and the same Berkeley Data Science building, which is room 190 in Doe Library. And all this information will be posted on the top pin Piazza post after this lecture. Before that part, I'm actually going to go into a Ruby syntax lecture. But do we have any questions before I start that? And if you want to follow along with me doing this, feel free to. I don't know if Ruby is inherently installed on Windows computers, but if you have a Mac, you could actually access Ruby, and I'll show you how in a quick second. Okay, so if you have a Mac, I know that if you type in IRB, you get an interpreter prompt. Can anyone just like raise their hand like yes or no that if you have a Mac, that's good. For Windows, I'm not sure if you can do that, but if you Google search a Ruby interpreter and if you want to follow along with me, that should work too. I bet there are online interpreters. Where did my window go? Okay. So these are slides I prepared last semester, and I'll just go through a slide and then show you on the interpreter how to apply the information on it. But a quick poll first. How many people are familiar with Ruby? Like, you've done Ruby before. How about that? Okay, a small number of you. How many have used Ruby in like a project? Like a personal project or anything like that? Okay, even a smaller number, it seems like one. So how many people claims to be a Ruby master? All right, that's totally fine. You're gonna be Ruby masters at the end of this. So first off, an interesting thing about Ruby is everything is an object. So within like Java and C, we have this idea of primitives that like they don't really have functions on them. But in Ruby, everything is an object. And what I mean by that is, for example, this is my Ruby interpreter. If I have an integer, right? Normally when we think of integers, you can't add, subtract them. But these integers in Ruby actually have methods to them. So if I do period that 2_s, which stands for toString, it'll run a method on this integer object to return me a string. If you want to ever see all the methods on an object in Ruby, all you have to do is type .methods. It will link you a bunch of real methods on the object. So like one example, like integers work as other programming languages with interpreters. If you do 5 + 5, it'll just do the integer evaluation that gets you 10. Just gonna make this bigger. But let's see. It has other methods. Find a cool one. Use number. Oh, bit length. Okay, let me show you a cool one. Bit length. So basically, bit length is a method on integers, right? You don't have to know this detail. I'm just showing it for the sake of like showing that it's an object. But integers, when you think about like an integer in like C, and if you take in 61C, you know that integers are represented by 32 bits, right? There's a method on your Ruby integers that allows you to see what's the minimum number of bits to represent this. For example, for 2, to represent 2, we need 2 bits. And does anyone remember how many bits you need to represent 255? Anybody? 61C? I heard 8. 8, exactly. So then if I call 255.bit length, it makes 8. This particular method is not useful in your Rails career in any way, but I just want to show you that everything in Ruby is actually an object. Let's see. Let me go on to my next slide. In Ruby, we have something called implicit returns. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So in Ruby, we can define a function by typing def and the name of the function. Let's call it foo, right? And let's say it's a 1-argument function. And what foo is going to do is return 5 plus a, right? In Ruby, instead of what you always have to do between every clause and every function in every class is put an end after it. And that tells Ruby that we're going to end the function. So now I've defined a function called foo. When I tried to just call foo right now, but it says wrong number of arguments because it takes one. But for this example, I'm going to say foo of 3. What is this going to return me? I hear people mumbling, so I'll just go with it. 8, right? But when I say Ruby has implicit returns, this is what I mean. Let's say I could redefine foo, right? This will overwrite my original definition of foo and say just a plus 5. That's it. I'm not going to use the word return. I'll put end. Let's see. Oh, whoops. That's a Python thing. There are no colons. It's like a small subtle difference that you'll learn really fast after messing it up a few times. But let's just define foo and just say a plus 5 and end. So in Ruby, if I set b equal to foo of foo of 5, what do you expect? Let's say this was Python, right? And I forgot to put a return statement at the end and just ran a plus 5. I will get nil because I forgot to return the value at the end. But in Ruby, oh crap, undefined local variable t. Oh, that was a typo. I meant a plus 5. Sorry, and now I'm going to rerun it. B equals foo of 5. I gave it 5 as an argument. All I did was add 5, and what it did was actually return 5. It actually returned 10 instead of nil. And what I'm trying to say is that your functions will always return the last statement that was evaluated within the function, and that's something that isn't common in other programming languages. Naming. This is just this is convention in Ruby, that naming conventions are similar to Python, that when you name variables, always do underscore, like that, like good underscore name, instead of doing camel case like this. Do not do that. Do this, good name equals the string. That's a good variable name. When you define a class, use define a class. How about that? You just type the word class and say my class. Use this styling where you capitalize the first letter of every word, no underscores. This is stylistic preferences that Ruby on Rails actually relies on. And I'm going to just end this class. There's nothing in this class, but this is convention that you should follow. Do you have any questions on any of these 3 things before moving on? Yes.
So if we use camel case for just normal variables, would be on Rails mark as at one point or another for that, or just do that you should use
It is good convention in terms of just working with teammates that the style of code's the same. But Ruby on Rails will bark at you if your class names aren't in this format, because to load a class, it basically guesses the string name of the class, and if it's wrong, it will error out. And in terms of local variables, Rails will never look at that, but it will rely on your functions actually being in this, what we call snake case, which is all lowercase and underscores for spaces. So it is in your best interest to always keep that convention. But if you were to go out of the convention and break it a few times, you'll probably understand more of how Rails is guessing at your function names or your class names. Any more? All right. And just so you know, I'll post these slides online, so you don't have to copy everything word for word. So basically, in this slide, you assign variables. You have already seen this by enter. So a can equal 5, b can equal a string that there are Boolean values in Ruby, which are true and false. So C equals true, D equals false. And the difference between this and Python is that in Python, true is like the capital TRUE instead of the lowercase, because this is guessing that it's a constant, but the Ruby interpreter will recognize the all lowercase true as the Boolean. So let's talk about strings and string interpolation. Okay. So first, let's say I have a string which is hello, right? I have assigned the string A to be hello. So if I press A, it will give you back hello. Do B equals world. B equals world. In Ruby, the print statement that's similar to Python is what we call puts, P-U-T-S. So if I do puts A, it'll print out A for me and return me, like, you know how print actually returns a null in Python? It'll do the same here. It'll return a nil. A nil is Ruby's version of a null. If I do puts B, it'll say world. So whoops. Sorry, I messed up. Okay, so right now, in this final line here, I put puts hashtag curly bracket A space hashtag curly bracket B. This is what we call string interpolation. That whenever a Ruby goes into a string, right, and that you try to print out, and if it finds a colon open curly bracket, it will actually insert the following variable into your string. And when you close it off, like basically in this example, in the after the hashtag open curly bracket, you give it an A, right? And you close the curly bracket. What Ruby's going to do is look for the value of A in local memory and put it in that string in that location, and continue on reading through that string. And that's why when I do puts hashtag open curly bracket A space hashtag curly bracket B, it'll read first, give me the evaluation of A, which is hello, put a space in between it, and put the valuation of B. And why is this useful? It's because it just looks better than, like, if I wanted to do, if I wanted to print hello world in Python, what I'd have to do, and if I had it stored in A and B, I'd have to do A plus open space plus B and do that. And then every time I wanted to insert a space, I would have to plus the space plus the variable. But Ruby just allows you to just write out the whole string and say, insert the value of A here, insert the value of B there. Do you have any questions about that? All right, substrings. To access a substring, we'll say C equals hello world. Do a substring, instead of like, in Python, we do like 1:2, right? In Ruby, what we're gonna do instead is put 2 dots. It's like, oh, ellipses, and then from 1 to 2. So what do you think this gets me? Does anyone want to venture raising their hand? Yes?
It would be like, there were more numbers, like 1, 5, you could go 1, dot, dot, 5, and put everything in there.
Yeah, so what do you think will come out when I do 1 dot dot 2?
I got syntax there.
Not, if this were Python, it would be a syntax error, right? This is just the format that Ruby accepts it in. So when I give 1 dot dot 2, it will actually give me the letters E and L, because E is at index 1 in Ruby, strings are 0 index, so we start at E. And what you notice is that it gave back me index 2. And in Python, that wouldn't happen because usually when you do like 1:2, it would stop before 2 and only give you one letter. So what this is saying is that it will, when you do 2 dots, it will include the last letter or the last element. But if you want to replicate what happens in Python and not include that, you just add an extra dot and you only get the E back. Yes. Can you still use a comma? I do not know that answer off the top of my head, but we can find out. Yeah. Yes. To reverse the string. I don't know about its splicing because we don't, like in computer science and programming and stuff like that, in like theoretical computer science, that we do a lot of like slicing of lists, but actually in Rails, I haven't done much slicing in web applications, so I don't know how to do it off the top of my head in this version of the syntax, but I'm pretty sure we could just do, if you want the reverse string, you could just call dot reverse on the string. This string has a lot of helper methods like the integer that, okay, I should close that. All right, let's just ignore that. But so if we have, so you could just reverse the string like this. Another useful thing is if I call upper, or no, sorry, uppercase. Get the whole string all capital. And if I want the lowercase version of all capital string, I could just do downcase. It'll give me hello world, all lowercase. Yes. Booleans. So in Ruby, I said everything was an object. So what that means is everything in Ruby is true except nil and false. And the interesting, the thing that you always have to watch out, or that most programmers that go from Python to Ruby have to watch out for, is the fact that 0 therefore counts as true. So if you do like if 0 print 5 end, it'll print 5 for you. And the reason why you get a null back is that every clause, like every if else clause, actually has a return value, and that return value is nil. Okay. Arrays are similar in Python, that you could just build an array like A equals the array 1, 2, 3. And we have an array 1, 2, 3. Arrays have convenient methods like first, A dot first gets me 1. A dot last gives me the last element. And you could access array indices like Python where you just go 0 or index 1 and you get the values. What are your questions about that? Hashes are like Python dictionaries. The most common hash we're going to use is what we call a symbols hash. So let's say H, we'll define a hash, H, right? And we'll say A maps to 1, B maps to 2. Now we have a hash that A maps to 1, B maps to 2. That to access elements in our hash is the same as Python, except that in Ruby we have this weird thing called a symbol. And a symbol is like basically an immutable string that to access element A, we just pass it :A, and we get back our 1. Access, if we want to access B, we get the value that's stored in B, which is 2. And we could do assignment like this. So let's say we update B to 3. That once we re-access B, it'll give us back 3. Yes.
So when we put the goal there, it'll make it simple.
Yes. So a symbol is, I don't know if does 61A still cover like the whole scheme thing, scheme programming language. Okay. So did you guys talk about symbols in Scheme? Yeah. So it's similar to that in the fact that symbols are just, for the purpose of this class, symbols are just immutable strings. Like, you know how everything's an object pretty much? Strings are mutable. You could like edit a certain element in them. You could pass strings as objects, but symbols are immutable. So if we do, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head that will kind of showcase this difference, but just for the most part, you'll use symbols a lot for hashes. And I will get back to you with a better example next week. Yeah.
So if there was like a variable b and you use the symbol b, so those are two distinct things.
Yeah, those are two distinct things. Okay. Oh, I had a slide for this. So basically symbols, according to the slide, are just basically strings that don't have string methods, and they can't be mutated, which is what I talked about earlier.
Can you access keys and a hash with a dot notation?
With a dot notation?
In JavaScript, you know,
No, you can't. Yeah, that would be really convenient, but no, you can't. Class and methods, I showed you how to define a class earlier, but I will get into a little bit more detail right now. Let's define a class called myClass. So if you've taken 61B in Java, there was initializer methods, right? Or a method that like all objects have, or all classes have to initialize an object. In Ruby, it's called initialize. So you define initialize, right? And it could take in you could define it to have multiple arguments, one argument, no arguments. So let's say we will have, it takes in a single argument, A, right? And we'll define at A equals A, and that. What I just did there is define an initializer that takes in one variable, and what we'll do is store that variable. So you see that at symbol in front of the A? This is what we call an instance variable. In 61B, you learn like you define a class, right? But when you make an instance of a class, it'll store variables like, length. Or if this was a shape, if this was a point, for example, a common example is like points and lines for object-oriented programming. If you define a point, it has like self.x equals a number, self.y equals a number. Ats are this same thing. They basically say an instance of this class will store this information. What are your questions about that? Yes.
Okay, so I've had a really hard time understanding this. So what is the best way to access instance methods from instance variables from outside? It's like in Python, you need a dot. Method. How do you set that up in Ruby?
So in Ruby, that gets more complicated. Doing that gets more complicated with basic Ruby, and Rails will automatically put getters and setters for you. But basically, you have to actually define your own getters and setters in Ruby.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I know I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's very hard to kind of explain it without explaining about a billion other things along with it. Okay, but just basically remember, an at means an instance variable. That's all you need to know for now. And there are two types of methods, instance methods and class methods. So I'm going to do something called self. I'm going to define self.high, make it puts high, close it and end. And I'm going to define by without a self in front of it. And it will take in a variable. And then I'm going to put at A plus B, and that, and end that. Okay. I defined a class called myClass, right? So does anyone remember static variables from Java? Or sorry, not static variables, static methods. So basically, when I did this self.high thing, whenever I put the word self in front of the function name, it means I don't have to call this off an instance of a class, but I could just call it off the class itself. So when I do my class.high, I'll print out the high and return nil because puts returns nil. Okay. To access to access the ability to use by, you see that there's no self in front of it. So instead of using the class my class, I need an instance of my class. So if I take my class, it'll return me back just this class object. But I want an instance of class. That means I have to initialize a class. So let's store an instance of a my class in M. So I do M equals my class dot new. And the thing is, I never defined new. But this is something really weird about Ruby, is when you call .new on a class, it's going to run the initialize method. It's just a weird fact that you don't need to know for the how all this works for the sake of doing well in this class, but it will, if you understand this, it'll provide more insight on how Rails is working underneath. So M equals my class.new. It takes in a variable, right? I'm going to pass it 6. So now you see M is this instance. It takes up, this is like a memory address that where an instance of my class is stored. And here are the variables. It's stored at A equals 6. So that means if I do m.by and pass it in 7, what do you think will happen? Can anyone tell me? Looking at, this is the bytecode right here. And we know at A equals 6. Huh? Yeah, it'll return 13. It will just take the 7, plug it in as B, retrieve what the value of A is stored, which was 6, and give me 13. It will print out 13. But since I put a put statement, so it'll actually return null. But main point is it gets out 13. That's probably the biggest piece of information you know about classes. Yes.
Wait, so is it actually puts is returning nil, or is it because the last line you have is puts? So because puts doesn't actually return anything from this ends up returning the last line.
It's both.
But
So it's basically, so your second statement covers everything. But
like if you put like puts and then you actually return something after the puts, would there still be a nil?
no, there would not be a nil.
So it's from because the fact puts.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's something that you'll see about 1 billion times in the future that you will think is really weird, but you'll find out now is, what? Indentation? Indentation does matter. Yes. Yeah, indentation does matter. So something you'll find out now, and you'll see about 1 billion times that you'll think looks really weird about Ruby code that you see other people write, is something called poetry mode. So Ruby will automatically call functions on arguments given given a space right after it. So you know how I called this function by doing what you see in Python, which open paren 7 close paren, and get 13, I run by. Ruby accepts this as valid Ruby logic if I just give it a space and pass it a 7. And just to confirm this works, if I pass it 13, it prints out 9. And let's say I define a 2-argument function. Let's define foo again as a b and just return a plus b in that statement. So I could do foo 5 comma 6 and it'll give me 11. Yes.
Does that notation work for defining functions?
As
For defining functions.
defining functions. I don't know. I don't think so. As far as I've never done it before. And the reason I just tell you about this poetry mode, like most of my Rails knowledge is from like just doing Rails and looking at other people's Rails code. And a lot of people just omit the parentheses. And that really confused me about a lot of things at first, and that's why I mentioned it. But I've never seen someone omit the parentheses when defining a function just yet. Yes?
How does it work with, like,
What do you mean by nested functions?
or like nested function calls, like foo of
Oh, okay.
foo of-
Oh, it won't work like that. Yeah. It won't work. You can't nest a function call. Ruby will not be able to figure out how to do it. Yeah.
That just the concept works.
Okay, it works. So then basically you're saying if I do def foo a comma b, and I do a plus b, then if I do foo of 19 and then comma 20, it works. That's interesting. I didn't know that until now either, but yeah. So there's a bunch of Ruby that is syntactic sugar. But so if you see this, don't freak out like it seems like it's some weird syntax error. This actually works. And I'll figure out how to turn off my Facebook notifications. I don't want to see this. I'll deal with this later. Okay. So last thing are control blocks. Thing that you need to know right now is how to basically iterate over an array. So let's say I define A as an array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 54, okay? That is my array. So in Python, what I would do for an array is like, for I and A, do some logic, and that's it. In Ruby, this is how we go iterate to array. We do call A, and we call .each do, space do, and give it a local, a variable for it to use locally. So I said a.each do I, it'll automatically indent for me, and now I get to iterate. So right here, I'll write logic to do on each element of I. So what I'm going to do is say puts, which is prints, puts I plus 7, right? And I put end. What this is going to do is say, for each value in my array A, I'm going to take the value, which is I. I'm going to say the value is going to be defined I below. And I say take I, plus add 7 to it, print it out, and end it. And this is what happens. On the first loop, I do 1 plus 7, gives me 8. The second, 2 plus 7, which gives me 9. Third, 3 plus 7, which equals 10. And finally, 54 plus 7, which equals 61. And do you remember how I said that everything like has a return value in Python? Every class has return value. When you do a.each blah 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 run your logic, after you end it, what it will return is the original array. That's why we get this final print of 1, 2, 3, 54, because after performing whatever logic, it'll just return me back the array. Yeah.
So really, what's the easiest way to get a range of integers? You know, in Python we have range.
Yeah.
Like it's a way to go like from 1 to 100 or something.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's this. 1.100.each do. Let's just put I and I use for fixed num. Got wait. Okay, I'm pretty much guessing at this point.
By putting 1 to 100 in parentheses, and then do that.
Oh, thank you. This is Warren, by the way. He's the TA that just came from 170. The 1.100. Oh. So each do I puts I. There we go. I forgot the parentheses. Okay. Thank you. But that's how you could get a range. Okay. That was pretty much, sorry, that was like a lot of content about Ruby. And it's been over an hour of Ruby content. So that's the end of the lecture. You'll be doing practice with the homework assignment, and I'll post it on Piazza after class. And just so you know, homeworks are due the next Friday of when they're released. So if I release a homework today, it's not due this Friday, but the following Friday. So I don't know the date, but just plus 1 week, plus 3 days. Do we have any questions before I go to how to install Rails? So basically, there's this doc. There's 2 docs. Can you see the links, or do I have to make it bigger? Okay. So if you have a Mac or Linux computer, if you go to this link, bit.ly/rails-decal manual-setup, you could install Rails natively on your computer. If you're on a Windows machine, or if you're on a Mac/Linux and you want to use a VM, go to bit.ly/rails-decal-vm-setup. And me and the TAs will be here until 6 to help you set that up. So if you have any questions, raise your hand. And for those who wanted to be added to the wait list or aren't on the Piazza right now, should come up to me now. Thank you.